Okay, so without further ado, we have got Mr. Richard Cadden here with us. He is 2 times World Muay Thai champion, a UFC official, business owner, and all-round nice guy. Rich, how are you doing?
Good afternoon. Good
Good
afternoon.
afternoon indeed. So,
Good.
A bit of a backstory. This video has been recorded in 2 separate takes, as you can probably tell, because you're going to see that we're both wearing different T-shirts the first time. Because we had some technical difficulties with the old Zoom thing, so we're finishing off the interview today. Rich, how's the week been? What's been going on?
It's been good. We've been busy. Been cracking on with my Zoom classes and stuff like that. Just trying to keep the gym running.
So I was saving you up for once I got going, Rich, and things over the last year. I mean, you've had quite an interesting journey, especially where, if I remember rightly, it wasn't that much more than a year ago when you started the Yas Island thing. Is that about right?
Yeah, so that's around when Fight Island started.
Yeah, I remember. Do you know whether it had any kind of direct thing to do with the COVID thing, or were they planning that anyway?
Yeah, so they were already planning this already, and it just kind of the limitations that were put on UFC and stuff. They knew that they were going to have to change.
So diversification is probably a great kick-off subject then, because when you went over to work with the UFC, and obviously this is a bit back to front, because the obvious place to start with any interview with a world Muay Thai champion would be to go straight to the Muay Thai. But I thought, as this is the Fight Business podcast rather than the Muay Thai or MMA podcast, I thought it'd be an interesting thing just to look at. We started talking again about a year ago. I think it was when you got in contact about Fight Island with the UFC, and I can't remember off the top of my head whether it was just before or just after the whole COVID thing broke, but it seemed to coincide rather nicely with the fact that they were getting shut down in the US.
Yeah, so things were starting to get shut down. We were in a difficult position. Everyone was in kind of panic mode, and literally everyone was just going, well, it's panic mode, let's shut things down. But Dana, in his great mindset, great attitude, said that this show doesn't stop.
The show must literally go on, and if we have to buy a bloody island and do it somewhere else, then that's what we're going to do. And it was pretty amazing the way that they transformed the entire show and relocated. Like, I mean, okay, they've got massive resources, but just to have the idea, okay, we're going to buy an island and we're going to set up shop somewhere else, and we're going to move our entire operation to the Middle East. Like, wow.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of martial artists grew up around the Bruce Lee era, and the Enter the Dragon idea, Mr. Han with his.
Is Dana White Mr. Han? Is that him?
Well,
he's the American version.
Obviously, similarities, and there was that story and all the merch and stuff like that. So like
it was genuinely a genius move. Like, I really thought it was, and over the many years that the UFC have now been running, it's 25 years, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I remember the early ones, and when everybody who was into martial arts at the time was just beginning to hear these whispers of this no-holds-barred fighting thing, and people got more and more interested in it as things developed, and there was definite split for a long time of the believers and the non-believers, wasn't there? But to see how much the UFC as an organization has transformed the world of martial arts, and there's no doubt There is no doubt they have. And to see that innovation, that process as recently as last year, where that diversification, that the show must go on attitude, it's amazing. So when you went out there the first time, I mean, what was that experience like?
Surreal in a way. Me and my wife would just come back. We'd planned to go on a cruise. We flew out to New York, flew all the way to Puerto Rico. When we landed in Puerto Rico, we got an email, ferried to the hotel, and says we're going to bounce you straight back because of COVID. So that was one thing, and then literally, like, I think there was maybe 4 or 5 weeks between that event and going out to Fight Island. It was surreal just seeing how the airports changed and people were interacting with each other. I mean, the safety protocols that we had to go through for UFC to even get there were massive. Yeah.
And we'll get into that a little bit later, because I know you and I have both had our things to say about this. But yeah, but let's pull back a little then. So there'll be a lot of people in the fight sports community who do know who you are, but this podcast and the whole channel that I'm building on has got nothing to do with martial arts. It's a business channel, and it's all about lifestyle business. It's about small business. It's about going your own direction, if you like. That's what the channel is effectively about. And I originally came up with the idea of the Fight Business Podcast and was going to put it on the Fight Store Pros YouTube channel originally, but I think it's very, very relevant for anybody looking at small business as a lifestyle business, because the martial arts industry is full of people who have gone down the route of a lifestyle business, effectively. Yeah. So let's pull all the way back. So you went out to Thailand and worked on your martial arts career. How old were you when you did that?
Okay, so this is kind of where my ridiculous work ethic kicked in.
Right.
I was a full-time student studying an engineering degree. I worked full-time at the railway as an engineer and project manager. And then I was also training and competing as a full-time Muay Thai fighter against full-time athletes.
So, but what point did you decide to go to Thailand?
Straight from.
Or was it just a back and forth thing?
Yeah. So basically, just using all my annual leave from the railway. A change is as good as a rest. So I was going straight out to Thailand, grafting my ass off and cutting my teeth out there against some of the best guys in the world, and yeah, basically followed Jitty Damiram around several gyms before he solidified and set up his own gym in Ratchada, and then it was literally there and back every year.
And during that time, what thought did you have about you going your own way and working in the industry other than in the fight career? Because did you have any unrealistic idea or any idea that becoming, even because when you became world champion, still it didn't allow you to be like if you're a world champion athletics guy or a world champion in football or whatever, it's a totally different setup, isn't it?
Yeah.
So being a world champion, a genuine world champion in martial arts, quite often means that you still need to work.
Yeah. So I was still towards the end of my railway career. I was working on the shop floor. I was doing my degree. The managing director came down, said, "How's your college work going?" I says, "I'm just in my last semester now. I'm just waiting for my exams." and he kind of looked at me as if to say, what the bloody hell have we got an engineering degree student working on the shop floor for? We should be nurturing this kind of talent. So I was kind of earmarked and pushed through. Was given several jobs to kind of climb that hierarchy, and I thought that that's what my journey was going to be. I thought it was going to be working on the railway, and Thai boxing was always going to be my kind of side hustle, so to speak. It got to the point where I was very high up in the business. I was overseeing some of the company takeovers and stuff like that. Going out assessing sites for like asset management and that kind of thing. Through to even, I was then at a technical level where I was advising the board of strategic decisions to make.
Okay, so what was the catalyst? What kicked you out of this? Because there you are, you got what looks like to most people a good career in the railway. You're being fast tracked through, earmarked for higher things, so to speak. And what was it that made you think, to hell with this, I'm going my own direction?
Redundancy.
So if that hadn't happened, do you think you would have come out?
I don't know. I don't know. You know, I mean, it's one of them things where I enjoyed the engineering side of things. I was struggling. I was young at the time with some of the kind of office politics and stuff that was going on. As I was climbing higher and higher, there was more and more politics going on, and I was a bit wet behind the ears. I was a bit green about it, and I kind of fell out with a couple of people along the way. And then for me, I kind of turned around and I was like, well, I enjoy the engineering. I'm good at this. I can do this. Like I could do this with my eyes closed. I just don't particularly get on with these guys.
Yeah, and they weren't your people.
No.
And here's an interesting put. This is something I talk about an awful lot actually on the channel. Like I've been managing to get these videos out fairly regularly now. Like once I committed to doing it, and I talk a lot about this both on the channel and then the impromptu Gadget and Truck podcast, where I'm talking about it's all very well having a great career, blah, 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 but if actually for large chunks of your day, you're actually not really that happy in the day and you're actually living for something else, then is there an argument to say, okay, well, you maybe want to make a switch before it's too late?
Well, this is it, and like towards the back end, I had to go through a couple of disciplinaries with my boss and stuff. And one of the things that he came out to say was, everyone knows you as Rich the Thai boxer. They don't know you as Rich the engineer. You haven't proved yourself to be good enough to be known as Rich the engineer. And it was like it was a bit of a slap in the face because I was more highly qualified than him. I'd climbed just as high as him as he'd done in 20 years. And I was like, well, hang on a minute. What do I have to do to prove that point? And the fact is that a lot of my issues around this came from the fact that I was very passionate about what I say, and them being intimidated by the fact that I box and I do Thai boxing and I fight for fun.
Aside from the slap in the face, do you feel that you were Rich the Thai boxer? That was the reality, and regardless of how good you were at the job, that's not really the point, was it? Like, was it that he actually had it right? You were Rich the Thai boxer.
Yeah, 100%. I mean that's where my passion was, and this is where the kind of spinning plates thing was coming in, and I was getting drawn out, basically saying, well, you're gonna have to make a decision. You can't have a foot in each camp. You have to make a lifestyle choice about where you want to be.
Well, one of the things that comes up hear a lot on a slightly different subject, but it's the same mold, the same thinking, is where you get guys who are either employed or they're kind of self-employed, but employed, self-employed. They have a side job and another job. And one job is giving them X amount of income, and the other one is vastly underneath what is the main role, but they've got all the passion in the other camp.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one of the things I feel holds a lot of people back, not all, but a lot, is they go, well, as soon as I'm making the same amount of money as I am in the first role, I'll switch. But the reality is that's never going to happen, or it's highly unlikely to happen until they put the same amount of energy and commitment into the other role. And sometimes it does like require like a shutdown, like, okay, I don't do that anymore. And that was came up in the Max Cortegiano interview, where he left a real estate job in Paris, which sounds like a pretty decent job, to go and draw BJJ flowcharts. But he's made an effective business out of it, and that's the reality. So when did you start the gym? So what was the transition from Rich the world champion, Rich the engineer, to Rich the gym owner?
So 2005, I won my first world title. 2007, I won my second world title. 2008, I got made redundant. And I'd done a lot of supplementary training around my Thai boxing and stuff like that, with strength and conditioning, personal training. I've just started my mind coaching and NLP journey around that kind of time. And so I was doing a lot of personal training through until 2011. So I had around 3 years personal training out of the back of my car, and doing like personal coaching that way. And then in 2011, we found the gym venue, consolidated everything, pulled it all together under one roof, and Chuck D Academy was born.
And so Chuck D started when? 2011, did you say?
2011 as a full-time establishment. Yeah.
Right. And how was the journey from 2011? So you get the doors open. So what was the stage between 2010 and 2011? So walk me through getting that gym set up.
Okay, so I was building up more and more personal training clients. I was going out using parks, using people's private gyms. I had a couple of high-end clients that were advising me to get a full-time place, and this is what you need to do. And it became one of those little whispers that slowly but surely became more and more of a shout.
And how did you feel about moving into commitment, premises, all that? Like, was it like a big step where you're like terrified?
Yeah. I mean, even now, our main costs are rent and business rates. That's what kicks my ass every year. But the fact is that through that year, it was working out right. Okay, I'm offering these people this quality of service above and beyond what they're getting from any other personal trainer. Do I have that brand loyalty in what I'm supplying to make them be motivated enough to not just have everything served to them on a plate, and make them willing to get in the car and come down to the gym?
Yeah, right.
And that was the kind of the battle that I was having in between.
I imagine we're going to have quite a lot of people from the martial arts community watch this particular podcast. Like, it's an obvious one. And obviously in the role that I've had especially in Rev Gear, but earlier than that with parts of Fight Store and some of the stuff that we've done directly with gyms, we've seen it more and more in the last 2 to 3 years. But I see a lot of gym owners who still don't see themselves as business owners. They still see themselves as the coach at a club almost. They don't see their clientele as customers. They see them as people who come to the club. And there's a bit, now you're a mind coach and you do other things as well. How difficult was the shift for you? Because I know you now do see yourself as a business owner. We've had plenty of conversations now.
Yeah,
it's clearly obvious that you recognize that you run a business, but the amount of people who don't recognize this is stunning. And I understand how difficult that shift can be in a close network, in a close community, because it's not like opening a shop where people come in, then they leave. They come in, buy something and leave. And albeit you might have customers that you recognize and know, it's different to where you're developing actual relationships with them. How difficult a shift was this to you? Or was there ever a shift? Or I'm assuming it was, but how did you about it?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I think it comes down to terminology. Now, you're always going to have different people that come into your gym and stuff like that. But there's a difference between customers that may come in for a session or buy a month's worth of training or whatever, but they don't wholeheartedly embrace the mind and body aspect that we push. They come in and they cherry pick exactly what they want without an inquisitive mind. And so they get the service that they're paying for, and that's it. However, there are other people that see that there's a little bit more value in what we offer if they immerse themselves in the process, in the kind of Chuck D lifestyle. And this is the difference between a customer and a client. So a customer is someone that buys a one-off service. They come in, they pay for the service, and then they leave, and that's it. This
is your definition, right? This is your definition.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be my definition, but go
okay. And then there's a client who you have an invested interest to look after the whole well-being of the client above and beyond what they're kind of initially buying into. So
in terms of your mindset though, without the client, that's an interesting definition for sure. Like, as I say, that wouldn't be my definition necessarily. In fact, a lot of people would just see customers and clients as the same thing. It's just a different term. It's interesting that you see it, you split it differently. And I imagine there will be multiple business owners with multiple definitions and levels of clientele, if you like. That's how I would call that. So whether for example, in our business, we would see some people call what I would call a wholesale customer a trade customer. And I see that it is largely just interchangeable. But terminology is a funny thing, and everybody thinks about these things slightly differently. But your own mindset, when you open the gym and then you get going, how has your mindset changed over the last, you've been open for 10 years, so over a decade from when you started to kind of where you are now? How has that formulated and changed, or has it changed?
It's kind of recognizing that not everyone comes in with the same motivation and enthusiasm that I may offer. I'm absolutely buzzing when anyone comes through the door, and I'm trying to give them the very best service that they want, so that I'm trying to encourage the client relationship. However, some people may choose to be a customer and go, thank you very much, see you later.
Yeah.
So my mindset, I have to be a little bit more. I've become a little bit more choosy, to be fair.
Right.
I've had to kind of rein back and not really give so much.
Yeah.
Because
to be fair, I've actually seen that an awful lot in, especially with higher level guys who start an academy. One of the interesting things that I've seen in the martial arts business across a lot of different sports as well, but the guys who were high level fighters who happen to have made good coaches as well, because they don't always necessarily mix. But there are plenty of examples of guys who are great fighters who go on to be excellent coaches too. But they still struggle with getting out of the mindset of being that high-level fighter that they once were and becoming not only a good coach, but a business person. And that's the switch, where they can't find that. They find it difficult to accept different people's expectations. I think that would be getting into the idea that they are actually running a business often ends up holding them back. They can't get into that idea. They can get into the idea of running a club with a premises, but they still aren't in the mindset of running a business. Whereas you get these guys who, as martial artists, are at best, average at best, but they've got a really great business head, and they just go wholehearted to fulfill customer need and expectation, and they'll have like a following. Like you see it a lot in traditional martial arts, where these guys who are, low-level black belts in karate, taekwondo, any number of traditional martial arts, points, kickboxing.
I think this is where the McDojo model kind of comes from.
McDojo.
It's one of those where, yes, okay, they can have a fantastic business model, and they may do all the right things from an external perspective, but it's like, I'm trying to think of an analogy to explain it, but it's like you're doing all the right things that from a showy perspective. However, you don't have those kind of smaller nuances to boost people's performances.
That's the whole thing, though, isn't it? The issue there where it splits, and this is the interesting part in our industry, is: are you trying to run a business, or are you trying to produce really good athletes or really good people? And if you go on the 80-20 rule of the people who walk in, and how much does the business's success rely on that top percentage, or does it rely on it at all? There's a great question. And I think it can do. Like, for example, the Gracies in jiu-jitsu, obviously their success came from managing to mix a very high performance level with a very, very good business model in the end. Took a long time, but in the end, in our industry, I don't think that overall, like certainly people running a gym, I don't see overall that they necessarily have to combine. Now, that isn't me saying that they should or shouldn't. I'm just saying from a pure business point of view, I don't think the evidence would suggest that they don't have to combine. Yeah.
I mean, for me personally, I don't want to have to make a choice between big classes or high quality.
Yeah.
I don't want to split that.
Have you done much training in America?
No, I haven't trained in America.
Right. What would be
I've done jiu-jitsu in America.
right? What would be interesting is seeing one of those big commercial gyms where they do have a very high level team at the top. ATT is a good example in Florida, or Alpha Male, where really the gym is Uriah Faber's Ultimate Fitness, and then they've got Alpha Male, which is just the top of it. Which isn't really, it's not really what it's costs them money, not makes them any money, but it's the figurehead for the gym. Yeah. So let's move on a little. Let's move on a little from the martial arts business, or rather the running a gym. So what's coming up in the future, Rich? Where are we moving to now? Like we've talked a little bit about things over the last year, but let's start it all with how much effect has the whole COVID thing for the last 12 months had on your overall thinking about where you're headed? Good question.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's been a hell of a journey. I mean, like going from moments of having my head in my hands to having these like regeneration and remodeling the gym and stuff like that. It's given us time to a little bit of kind of rebranding.
Because for anybody who's watching this and doesn't know, which I would say that would be the majority, not the minority, right?
Yeah.
Rich has been one of the most vocal people about the injustice of the situation. Now, I'm gonna word this carefully, but Rich has looked at every angle to keep his own business open legally and legitimately. He's ticked every box, followed every rule, and I think it's fair to say that you've been quite frustrated over the last 12 months.
Very frustrated, very.
Yeah. So walk us through this a little.
Okay, so first of all, the main panic initially started with 4 of my members, the frontline NHS staff. They got a briefing saying that there was this new disease coming out called COVID. And if you have a look around in this meeting, 50% of the people won't be here next year. Like they were saying there was going to be a really high mortality rate.
Wow. I'd never heard anyone say that. That is the first time I've ever heard somebody say that. That's interesting. So that was the kind of level they were talking on. 50, but they were going to kill. It was going to kill half the room.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Obviously, these guys are frontline NHS staff. So the panic that
they really did terrify them.
Yeah.
I get it.
This message was then passed on to myself, like through like my whole my coaching ideas are kind of mind and body, as you know, and I could see that these guys were coming in and they were a bit disturbed. They shared these ideas with us, and they were at a point where they were saying, "Well, I'm not sure what to do. Like, carry on, crack on, doing your job." But then this what gave me what I perceived to be a little bit of foresight to look 6 months ahead and go, shit, I'm in a bad place right now. It was panic. It was panic stations
about the business,
about everything, about the business, about my life, about my friends, about like the community around us. Like it was like zombie apocalypse, like but for real.
Because there was a very eerie. I felt that at the time. I thought there was a very eerie atmosphere of strangeness early on. Like I remember seeing when they had their famous toilet roll, roll shortage. But it wasn't just. To be fair, you'd walk around a supermarket, which is, in our lifetimes probably wouldn't ever remember there being empty shelves, and it wasn't just toilet paper. I mean, it was literally there were empty shelves.
Everything. Everyone was stockpiling. Yeah. So, and then as we kind of progressed through that, we realized these numbers weren't falling off as they were being told.
Presented, I think is the word.
Yeah, as they were presented previously. So then we started saying, right, hang on a minute. There's a little bit of there's something not quite right. There's like your gut feeling is telling you something, but you don't have the cognition to turn that gut feeling into words.
Yeah, yeah.
And so this what led to me like digging a little bit deeper into some of the like mainstream media narrative and stuff like that, and start looking for other avenues to get my news and that kind of thing.
And this was a funny thing in the whole martial arts community, wasn't it? Because like we come from a community as a whole, like no matter which sport you originated in. But for people who are watching this interview who are not martial arts people, the combat sports community, as I would call it, of jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, boxing, mixed martial arts. There's one or two other additions to that, but that would be the core. You know, we're used to taking some risks.
Yeah,
in all manner of situations, and not only in the actual training and the fighting thing. Like a lot of the community will travel to fairly way off locations. Like I trained in Brazil. I moved around. I've been trained in Brazil, America, your Southeast Asia, Tom Billings, Southeast Asia. Yeah, these are not countries that in a lot of people's mindsets are so safe. Yeah. And so as a community, we're used to some level of acceptable risk is normal to us, just normal.
Yeah.
And we saw a lot of pushback along the way. But yeah, so this journey continues, and then the lockdowns start. Yeah. Last March, I believe, was the first.
It was around this time. Around this time last year.
Yeah, exactly. So it was almost exactly a year ago. So then what? So the lockdown started, and I saw a lot of what went out over the media and your media, your own personal media.
Yeah.
Plus, you got the experience of going to the UFC Yas Island things. So how did that shape your reality, so to speak?
So we had we said we're going to have to diversify the business. We've still got contractual agreements with all our members. We still want to be teaching martial arts. We just have to do it in a different way. It was my wife that kind of picked up on these Zoom call ideas and Zoom training.
Because a lot of people, like there are companies which are doing that or were doing that long before the lockdown, and there's guys like Master Matt, my old teacher Alan Orr, who's from your neck of the woods, or resided over there anyway. And there's the Peloton. Is it Peloton?
Peloton, yeah.
Peloton in the States. But a lot of clubs did that, didn't they? They went, right, we've got to do something for our members and switch to this Zoom thing. And most of them weren't really set up for it in any way, shape or form. It's a totally different thing. So how did you find that?
Yeah, so fortunately we had some good weather. I had some spare mats down at the gym to mat out my decking area. And we ended up doing over 300 Zoom classes over 3 months.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I was getting in fantastic shape.
Again, for people who weren't watching, Rich had a full head of hair before that.
Yeah, so it was hardcore on the Zoom sessions.
What was the take up like on it? How did the members react to it? I mean, it's all very well, like, I know a lot of clubs kind of did it because they felt they had to. But from a membership point of view, how, especially the people that you managed to speak to, you know, with a bit of hindsight, how was their feeling about it, their reaction to it?
Well, I'm proud of the loyalty that the members that stuck with us had. If it wasn't for those guys,
Yeah.
everything would have just kind of shut down.
And on that tip, how much damage did it do? I mean, what kind of membership drop did you get?
I dropped to around 30%.
70% drop.
A 70% drop.
Yeah. Weirdly enough, Rich, I speak to a lot of people in a lot of different industries, and somewhere between a 60 and an 80% reduction in business, even in businesses that could stay open, was actually quite common.
Yeah. So we had that massive drop off in membership. But then it was like, right, okay, well, what can we do to serve these people that have been loyal to us and have kind of stood by us? It's a lot of the time coaching is deemed to be this kind of physical thing. You have to be able to display it against somebody, against a resisting opponent. And this is where a lot of these kind of more realistic martial arts, if you can go down that route, this is where they're kind of seated, and to be able and to then start moving this into a non-contact form makes people go, well, you can't train it.
Yeah. Well, funny enough, one of the martial arts that did really well in this during this time, which it hurts my soul to know this, was Wing Chun, because the three forms, or the three open hand forms in Wing Chun, are solo forms, and they're very intricate, they're very detailed, and they can be done in a very small space. So, funnily enough, did all right during that time.
Yeah. So what this has meant is that for those guys that stuck with us, they've come on leaps and bounds. We've been able to think about like slow motions, shadow boxing and stuff like that, making sure that kind of that shoulders popping up and they're getting that little extra turn in the hip and being able to break these techniques down. So you've got, yes, it's not as exciting as just smacking the pads and having a bit of fun, but
it stepped people back to examine what they were doing.
Exactly. And so it takes it back to these kind of grassroots levels.
Weirdly enough, and this is a bit more of a martial arts conversation, but it does permeate other things as well. I'll get into this with the mind coaching thing in a second. I think this is a good actual lead into that. I've often argued that people who had a base in some form of traditional martial art but made the leap at the right time often were technically much better than guys who'd never done it. And it wasn't anything to do with physical attributes. It was exactly to do with what you're talking about right now, which is breaking moves down into its core and understanding them and getting technically adept before thwacking the pads and hitting the bags and doing the exciting stuff. And I mean, George St. Pierre would probably bear that out a little. But there's been many others. You could go through a lot of UFC champions, and a lot of the best guys, not all, but a lot of the best guys had a very, very strong base in something pretty traditional, which I think the evidence is there.
Yeah. So I started in judo when I was 8 years old, and so I had that kind of very traditional judo style and stance before I even started Thai boxing. So I'd been exposed to it in other areas.
When you get to the mind coaching then, so let's make that switch now, because we're right in that zone. We're talking about those things. So the mind coaching, like martial arts training on the whole, if you do it right, is mind coaching in a way, like if you do it right. How did that start? How did it develop, and where are you wanting to take it?
Okay, so it started with back at the railway, and on my annual appraisal every year, they couldn't pull me on anything technically that I was doing wrong. They were They were happy with all my performance figures and everything like that. But the only avenue that they had was this subjective opinion that my communication model could improve. So that I went on a couple of training courses and stuff like that, and nothing was quite kind of hitting the mark. Until I found NLP, which kind of pulled a lot of these like individual sections together into a more succinct course. I put it forward to my boss, asking if I could do that. He said, no, it's too expensive. He says, okay, I'm willing to pay for half. No, we're not willing to do that. I was like, fine, I'll pay for it myself. So I invested in myself in this NLP and hypnosis qualification. It was through a company called Helford 2000, based down south. A lot of the work was done online to start with. There was like 20 odd CDs to listen to, and I basically had to do this like pre-course study before doing the actual course itself, which then opened up loads of doors for how deep do you want to go down that rabbit hole. I've continued doing that until it was around 2012, and I was selected as one of the performance mind coaches for the Olympians at London 2012.
All right, wow. I didn't know that.
And I was one of the performance mind coaches for the Olympians at Rio 2016 as well. I worked with some of the swimmers and some of the boxing guys. Along this journey, what you start finding is what the kind of limiting factors are, and how you can like introduce those into the technique stuff that you're already doing anyway. So we do a little bit of physical stuff, we do a bit of mental coaching stuff. You start identifying internal dialogue and how people represent these ideas to you. You start spotting areas of congruency and alignment. So when you've already got someone like nodding in agreement with you, you know that you've got them already kind of going down that path, and it's almost a mutual loop.
You see a lot of NLP in sales training and stuff like that. Like I've seen a lot of people go down that, not necessarily NLP, but those routes in terms of sales psychology, developing customer relationships and stuff like that. And sports performance, I mean, we all say in the martial arts realm, don't we, say it's 80% mental, not physical. And you always see that guy, don't you? I think there was one on the Ultimate Fighter series where the coach is, he's drinking and smoking, and he's not really in the best of shape, but then he gets in the ring or the cage and just chins everybody.
Yeah,
and it's just a great mental attitude.
Yeah, that was when George St. Pierre and he got in John Charles Skabowski from France.
Yeah.
He came in. I think he was still drunk from the night before, and stepped in and absolutely leathered everyone.
Yeah. but that is the thing, isn't it? It's like people see the fighters are ripped to bits and the athletes who are like those amazing athletes, but throughout history, there's been those guys who, for whatever reason, they didn't have to be in the best shape. Not just fighters as well. It's happened in football. It's happened in other sports too.
I mean,
something.
It's probably one of the biggest things that I've taken from martial arts through my my experiences. You can never judge a book by its cover, and to be honest, I've had it when people see the kind of geeky engineer stepping in into a Thai boxing ring coming up against this guy that's covered in tattoos, head to toe, and snarling at you. It becomes one of them things where you're like, well, what are these illusions that he's hiding behind? What are these kind of masks that they're wearing?
And we see that in everyday life.
Yeah,
we see that in every day-to-day life, where you get people who are very aggressive or try and take total control of situations, and they're not really equipped to do it.
Yeah,
we see that everywhere. So where are you wanting to progress? Like, I didn't know the thing about the Olympics. That's pretty cool. Where are you going to take that next? Where's that going next? The Performance Institute, the move forward. So this is a big change in the way that you're wanting to move the business on. And over the last 10 years, as we've worked with Fight Store and RevGear and so on, we went from seeing no full-time gyms to one on every street corner. I think we mentioned that earlier in the interview.
Yeah.
But you're wanting to take it to a new level, aren't you? You want to do something which is probably a move on from there.
Yeah. So we're looking at pulling a few different facets together. I'm kind of modeling the idea from the UFC Performance Institute, where we'll work with a lot of specialists that in each of the different fields. So from a strength and conditioning perspective, from a nutritional perspective, from a mind coaching performance perspective, and what we're basically looking to do is, rather than it just being me wearing several hats, we can lean on the specialists and the guys that are doing this full time, and you're getting that immediate like deep immersion into that specific field. So within my network of friends and people that I've got around me, we're looking at boosting the strength and conditioning side, and making it an individual performance center rather than purely just martial arts. If you want to get good, come and work with us.
We had this guy up in the Northeast for a while, who was an academic strength and conditioning guy. He literally wrote the book. He wrote the syllabus for Northumbria University. He wrote the syllabus for Newcastle College. He worked with the Falcons and Newcastle United. And then for a period of time, he opened up this, I call it a gym, but it wasn't so much a gym. And he literally had every athlete from everywhere show up. Like, there was motocross guys, there was basketball players, there was a lot of kids who were like in the football academies.
Yeah.
And this lad's USP was that he didn't look at it as maybe an individual sport, but he looked at it very much as an overall performance objective, and came at it from, you want to succeed in your particular sport, and we're going to mold a syllabus around you.
Yeah,
and he got liftoff on that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm coming from a professional rugby background initially. I played rugby professionally before I started Thai boxing. That's what gave me this additional angle towards having a professional attitude towards my training from day one. And now I'm looking to kind of push that idea on with all my guys to make sure that, yes, okay, you can come down and hit the pads and train from a hobby basis. But if people want to compete and they want to push the level that little bit more, then there's a lot more work that's involved.
So what are the business challenges, Rich? So that's the performance and martial arts and sports side of it. But this is the Fight Business podcast. So the challenges you're facing as a businessman on this?
So from this perspective, I've got the idea and the concept. It's obviously now financing it. I'm kind of working within having like a web-based setup, not as in the internet, but as in like
A network.
We work as a central hub, and then I'll work with other people that have their own central hub for strength and conditioning, for nutrition. So I will recommend an approved supplier.
Yeah. And so in terms of the financing, is that for the building or for the whole setup?
So like this initial kind of embryonic phase is working in this web network type idea, but with the transition to hopefully moving into a central hub in a year, 2 years, however long it takes to build up that little bit of traction for our message to get out there, and then we put all those skills under one roof.
A lot of people in business, when they're trying to expand, when they're trying to grow, find at some point that they have a knowledge gap.
Right.
So it's nothing to do with what you do. It's to do with how you get from, not so much from A to B, but from F to H, so to speak. You've already got to F.
Okay.
Yeah. You've got to where you are. You know all this stuff. Like if somebody else, if the UFC put you in your particular bracket and said, right, Rich, you do that, you'd be comfortable as that. You'd be absolutely fine. But the challenge as a small businessman is quite often when you're looking to make that expansion, when you're looking to grow, you're out your comfort zone. There's suddenly new things that you have to know about. Like, for example, you just mentioned financing. That's something a lot of people have absolutely no knowledge of the best way to go and do it. So some people might try and personally finance it. Other people might go to the bank. Other people might try and crowdfund it. There might be any number of options they might go down, and it might be because they've had that experience prior.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily make it the right route.
Okay.
You see where I'm going? Like, has there been anything that you've looked at as you've started planning this out, which you've gone, oh, how am I going to do that?
Yeah. So, the way that things have kind of rolled out, it's almost been serendipitous. It's I don't want to lean on law of attraction, but there's a certain element to that when you're in your flow and you're in your striving to be better and actively pursuing and having these conversations. Sooner or later, that your conversations and networks are going to lead you to someone that can go, oh, I know someone that will help you with that.
Yeah.
And so, even though I've had a few, I mean, prime example is through all this COVID stuff, I've been badgering my local MP, but then I was invited by my local MP to a pre-budget meeting with 40 odd land investors and council heads, entrepreneurs and stuff like that have already got that have got those connections in other areas, and so it was like, well, okay, welcome to the crowd.
Wow.
So
that's a very I think I agree with that. Like, I mean, I don't know much about the law of attraction. I know the principle, but yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense, though, doesn't it? It's like if once you get an idea out there, where it starts gathering a little momentum and you stick with it, then doors start to open if you start looking for them. And I've often said to people who put barriers in their own way,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? They think of all the reasons why something can't happen, so it doesn't.
Well, and this is it. This is what a lot of, well, from a mind performance coach perspective, this is exactly what anxiety is.
All right.
All anxiety is just future pacing negative events and allowing those negative events to affect your now.
I feel better already.
It's magic.
So, as we said at the start, we had to round this interview off, and I think we've just done a pretty good job there, actually. So, what's the rest of the year? What's the rest of the year for Rich Cadden? We're just about into April now. We've got a couple of weeks, and then we can all actually make some moves towards getting back to some form of normality, whatever that is. Yeah, what's the rest of the year got in store then, Rich?
Well, we've already got. There's already some of the promoters putting ideas out there for open air events and events behind closed doors and stuff like that, like streaming events and things. So I think some of the guys are just itching to get back and start competing again. From a business perspective, it's allowing this the Performance Institute side of things to start rolling out and playing with those ideas and building up a bit of momentum on that side, and then through discussions. Well, yes, kind of see what happens and see where the chips fall. Yeah, so there's again, as we're always thinking about these things, you're thinking we've had to rip up the current like 1 year plan and 5 year plan because of all these shutdowns and the restrictions that we've been put in place. But we're coming up to a time where I'm having to re-sign leases and stuff like that on my business. So who knows? Like things may change within the next year. And like I say, as soon as these ideas pick up that momentum and catch that traction, things can move pretty fast.
Good. Final word. Imagine this scenario. So you meet somebody who's looking to set up a new business, but they're still in employment like you were as an engineer back in the day. You talked about that extensively. And you meet in a cafe or in a bar and you get talking. What advice would you give to that person who's in a job but wants to follow a dream?
I would say it would be fantastic, and it would be easy to just say, screw the job, chase your dream and chase that happiness. However, that's too wild for my thinking. Everyone's always got bills to pay. They got rent to pay, and
sadly, it's exactly what I would say. But
so what I would say is see how much of this, see how much you can chase your dream outside of your regular employment. So if you're working from 8 till 5 during the day, then what are you doing from like 6 p.m. through till midnight? You've got another 6 hours work there. Chase your dreams in those 6 hours. It's not an excuse to sit down and watch EastEnders.
Make it viable.
Yeah. So and like I said, put in the time, put in the work. If you work for somebody else and you've got a dream of doing something, then you're not tired when you leave work. You're just uninspired. So that's what you have to chase.
That's the headline. You've just hit the headline for the whole podcast. You're not tired. You're uninspired. That's the headline. Rich Cadden, thank you very much, sir. Fantastic interview. I'm glad we managed to round it off, and we'll have you on podcast. Well, I'm doing them in order, so we're on 4, so you're going to be on at least 40 or 400.
Okay. No
okay,
problem.
mate. Thanks very much.
Thank you.